Here a selfie, there a snapshot, there a group picture. Photos are an integral part of modern life. Since we always have our mobile phones in our pockets, it's easy for us to capture any motif with the camera. But today we want to leave these ordinary, everyday snapshots aside and take you on a photo series of a different kind. The 20 images that we'll show you in our videos sometimes seem disturbing, moving, or grotesque. Be curious about terrifying fates, unbelievable background stories, and unique testimonies. Let's get started. Before we jump in, be sure to hit the like button and ring the notification bell to stay up to date with our future videos. Also, stick around until the end to see one of the most disturbing photos ever captured. Human dolls. The abysses of the human soul know no bounds. The Russian Anatoly Moskvin kept sneaking into cemeteries to dig up corpses and make bizarre dolls out of them. After increasing cases of desecration of graves in the city, the police finally took notice of Anatoly. In his house, the officials were then presented with a picture of horror. The body thief had made 26 life-size dolls from the deceased, many of which he had repeatedly kissed and caressed. Spontaneous combustion. According to a modern myth, it's possible for the human body to burst into flames for no apparent reason. This inexplicable fate is also said to have overtaken Mary Reeser. Little was left of the woman's body but a lower leg and a pile of ashes. Particularly strange, no traces of fire could be found in the rest of her apartment. The FBI theorized that the burn was due to the wick effect set off by a lit cigarette. The flames feed on the fatty tissue just under the skin. Officials believe Mary lost consciousness while smoking, as she had previously taken sleeping pills. Jeannie Wiley. When Jeannie Wiley was 13, she could neither speak nor walk properly. However, this was not due to a congenital disease, but to the inhuman circumstances under which the girl grew up. Jeannie was severely abused by her father, crammed into a kind of straitjacket and chained to a toilet in a locked room all day long. Instead of speaking normally to his daughter, the father growled at Jeannie and bared his teeth like a wild animal. The photo of the sad teenager was taken in 1970, shortly after Jeannie was freed from her father's clutches. However, the suffering of the so-called wolf child was far from over. What followed was an odyssey in various institutions, where Jeannie was once again exposed to the most severe physical and psychological abuse. Her current whereabouts are unknown. Michael Rockefeller. Where is Michael Rockefeller? This question's remained unanswered since November 18, 1961. At the time, the son of the U.S. Vice President was in Western New Guinea, where he wanted to study the indigenous peoples. What finally led to the disappearance of the 23-year-old is uncertain. Some believe Michael was the victim of cannibalism. Others suspect he was killed by a wild animal. Perhaps most exciting is the theory that the American was taken by the Asmat tribe and has lived in the heart of the jungle ever since. Mokomokei. British officer Horatio Robley had an unusual passion for collecting severed heads. In detail, these were the so-called mokomokei, which were very important in the Maori tradition. Especially the faces of the male natives of New Zealand were decorated with tattoos, the so-called mokos. The mokos revealed a lot of information about their wearer, such as their rank, descent, or the heroic deeds they had accomplished. When someone died with moko, the head was removed and painstakingly preserved. The skulls were then stored in ornate cases and only brought out for sacred ceremonies. When the British invaded New Zealand, many heads were stolen by the Europeans. Mutated piglet. The Chernobyl reactor accident is one of the worst catastrophes of the 20th century. how much the events of April 26, 1986 plunged the surrounding world into chaos is also shown by the so-called mutant piglet, which has been on display in the Chernobyl Museum in Kyiv for some time. As a result of the high levels of radiation, the pig was born with dipagus, a severe deformity that grotesquely distorts the body and causes the pelvis and legs to double. Blanche Monnier. It's May 23, 1901, when Blanche Monnier's torments are finally coming to an end. The French woman had spent the last 25 years in captivity in the house of her own family. This happened as Blanche had refused to end a forbidden relationship. When she was freed by police at the age of 52, she weighed less than 30 kilos and lived in a tiny chamber littered with dirt, bugs, and feces. Selling children. This 1948 photograph shows us poignantly how poverty can literally tear a family apart. Due to their financial hardship, the parents had no other choice than to offer their 4 children for sale. And indeed, the offspring should go to different houses. Particularly tragic, the little ones experienced terrible abuse in their new families. Anneliese Michel. In the late 1960s, Anneliese Michel began engaging in disturbing behaviors. In addition to seizures, these included delusions, eating spiders, and even drinking urine. It was clear to Anneliese's arch-Catholic parents that their daughter was possessed by the devil. What followed were 67 exorcisms and the young woman's steadily deteriorating state of health. However, none of these countless exorcisms had the hoped-for success. Anneliese Michel died in 1976 at the age of 23. At the time, she weighed only 31 kilograms. Robert Overacker. In 1995, Robert Overacker wanted to put a daring plan into action. This meant that Robert drove on a jet ski to the edge of the Niagara Falls. Then he would let the vehicle fall into the abyss and open the parachute on his back. But everything turned out very differently. The parachute failed to deploy, and the 39-year-old Californian fell 180 feet to his death. Shadow of Hiroshima. On August 6, 1945, United States forces dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 80,000 people died in the attack. All that was left of many victims was a nuclear shadow. When the bomb detonated over the city center, it generated such intense heat that people's outlines were burned where they had been standing at that moment. The Beautiful Death. On May 1, 1947, Evelyn McHale jumped to her death from the observation deck of the Empire State Building. The body of the 23-year-old landed on a limousine where the student Robert Wiles captured it in the picture. Although the young woman wished that no one would see her body, the photo was published in Time magazine. There it was, accompanied by the headline, "The Most Beautiful Suicide." Nobody knew what made Evelyn end her life. She was known to those around her as a fun-loving, happy woman who was supposed to be married in just a month. Two-Headed Dog. Where the story of Frankenstein and the goals of a Soviet scientist collide, the grotesque photo of a two-headed dog emerges at the end. In 1959, after several failures, Vladimir Demikov actually managed to transplant the front part of a dog onto the body of another four-legged friend. After this bizarre procedure, both heads could hear, see, smell, and swallow. However, the double-headed animal died after just 4 days. Radium Girls. The Radium Girls were factory workers whose job it was to apply radioactive paint to the dials of clocks. In order to be able to draw finer lines, the women often licked the brushes used for this purpose. In addition, some workers used the irradiated paint as nail polish, which is why it's not surprising from today's perspective that many of them contracted severe radium poisoning. The health consequences were simply devastating. The women glowed in the dark, their jaws swelled, and many died. The hemoglobin concentration in the blood decreased and bone fractures increased. However, those responsible did everything they could to cover up the radiation sickness, which is why they also put great pressure on the treating doctors. John Wayne Gacy. John Gacy holds a sad world record. No other serial killer received a longer sentence than the so-called killer clown. During his lifetime, Gacy killed at least 33 young men. He later received 21 life sentences and 12 death sentences for his atrocities. The execution took place in 1994. The photo shows the future killer as an innocent toddler. Keith Sapsford. At the age of 14, Australian Keith Sapsford decided to break away from his everyday life. So it was that the teenager snuck into the wheel well of an airplane. However, when the machine took off, the teenager lost his footing and fell to his death. Coincidentally, a man clicked the shutter button on his camera just as Keith fell. Tara Calico. When Tara Calico said goodbye to her mother on the morning of September 20th, 1988, she jokingly said that she had better look for her if she didn't show up by nightfall. From that day on, the 19-year-old was never seen again. Almost a year later, however, a mysterious photo of the missing person appeared. Then we see the gagged young woman lying next to a boy who's also tied up. Amityville Horror House. It's November 13, 1974, when Ronald DeFeo roams through his family's home in Amityville and shoots everyone dead. Since that day, the so-called Amityville Horror House has always been the center of attention when it comes to places haunted by ghosts. The Ghost of Amityville. Later residents of the murder house reported again and again about strange phenomena and inexplicable events. Perhaps one of the most sinister pieces of evidence in these stories is a nighttime surveillance footage. On the left edge of the picture, we see a ghostly boy staring at the camera with shining eyes. Some suspect that this is the restless soul of John DeFeo. The boy was 9 years old when he was shot by his older brother. John Lennon and his killer. On December 8, 1980, John Lennon gave autographs in front of his house in New York, as he so often did. This time, a certain Mark David Chapman wanted to get a record autograph. The scene was captured by photographer Paul Goresh. What neither the ex-Beatle nor anyone else could have guessed at the time, a few hours later, the autograph hunter would shoot the pop star 4 times at exactly this spot. Sadly, Lennon would not survive the assassination. We're interested in your opinion. Which photo fascinated you the most? We're already looking forward to your comments. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to stay up to date from now on. Thank you for watching. Have a good one and see you next time.